A blood-red sun crept above the horizon as Hawthorn pressed a trembling finger to her lips, silencing the whimpering child clutched to her chest. Bruises painted her arms in cruel watercolors of purple and yellow, hidden beneath the sleeves of her threadbare dress as she darted between the shadows of buildings in Oatman, Arizona territory. 1882. She had fled in the night with nothing but 5-year-old Lily, the daughter of her late sister, and the desperate prayer that no one would find them before sunrise. The dusty mining town was just beginning to stir. A rooster crowed in the distance, making Hope flinch and duck behind a water trough. Her heart thundered in her chest as she heard shouting from the direction she'd come, her brother-in-law's voice, slurred with whiskey even at this early hour. When her sister died in childbirth 2 years ago, Thaddeus Fletcher had brought Hope to care for the child and his household. She'd endured his escalating cruelty, beatings, and drunken rages, but when he turned his violence toward little Lily last night, something in Hope had snapped. "We'll find another way," she whispered to the child, whose blonde curls were matted with dirt from their desperate flight. "We have to keep moving." She peeked around the corner, surveying the main street. The town was coming to life, a shopkeeper sweeping his porch, 2 men loading supplies onto a wagon, and there, further down, stood the imposing figure of Thaddeus, speaking with the local deputy and gesturing wildly. Her throat constricted with fear. "I want breakfast," Lily whispered, her small hand tugging at Hope's sleeve. "Soon, sweetheart. We must be quiet as church mice now, remember?" Hope edged back, planning to circle around behind the buildings when she collided with something solid. She gasped, spinning around to face a man whose features were shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His tall frame blocked the growing sunlight, and for a moment, terror stole her breath. "You running from someone, madam?" The stranger's voice was deep but gentle, tinged with a slight southern drawl. Hope clutched Lily tighter, ready to bolt, when the man shifted, revealing kind eyes that studied her face, then the bruises on her wrists where her sleeves had ridden up. "I don't mean any harm." He glanced past her to where Thaddeus continued his animated conversation with the deputy. "That Fletcher's got quite the reputation round these parts." "Please," Hope whispered. "He'll kill me if he finds us and the child, Isaac Xavier." He introduced himself quietly, touching the brim of his hat. "Got a ranch 5 miles out, if you're needing somewhere to disappear to." Hope hesitated, clutching Lily closer. Another man making promises, could she trust him? But Thaddeus's angry voice grew louder and she heard her name being shouted. "I don't have much time to convince you, madam," Isaac said, his eyes serious. "But I promise, if you come with me, you are safe. Both of you." Something in his steady gaze spoke of honesty that Hope hadn't seen in years. With Thaddeus's footsteps growing closer, she made her decision in a heartbeat. "Yes, please." In moments, Isaac had ushered them down an alleyway to where his horse stood waiting. He lifted Lily into the saddle, then helped Hope up behind her before swinging himself up. As they trotted casually out of town by a back route, Hope held her breath, waiting for Thaddeus's shout of discovery. But it never came. The desert landscape opened before them, painted in hues of amber and rust under the rising sun. Lily relaxed against Hope's chest as they put distance between themselves and Oatman. After miles of silence, Hope finally spoke. "Why would you help strangers this way, Mr. Xavier?" Isaac's broad shoulders stiffened slightly beneath his worn denim jacket. "Let's just say I recognize trouble when I see it, and no decent man turns away from a woman and child in need." As the sun climbed higher, they approached a modest but well-kept ranch nestled in a small valley. A weathered sign proclaimed it Cottonwood Ranch, and a stream curved around the property, feeding a stand of cottonwood trees that gave the place its name. "It's not much," Isaac said as they approached the cabin, but it's quiet, and Fletcher won't think to look for you here." Hope felt tears threatening. After 2 years of living in fear, the simple wooden structure before her looked like paradise. "It's beautiful," she whispered. An older woman emerged from a smaller cabin nearby, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Isaac. Didn't expect you back so soon, and with company, no less." "Mrs. Abernathy," Isaac nodded respectfully. "This is—" "Hope," she supplied, suddenly realizing she hadn't even introduced herself. "And this is Lily. They'll be staying with us for a while, Mrs. Abernathy," Isaac explained, helping Hope down from the horse. "They've had a rough journey." The older woman's shrewd eyes took in Hope's bruised arms and Lily's frightened expression, and her face softened. "Well then, let's get you both fed and settled. Nothing that a good meal and a proper rest can't help." As Mrs. Abernathy led them toward the main house, Hope turned to Isaac. "Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "No need for that," he replied, his sun-weathered face crinkling slightly at the corners of his eyes. "Just get some rest. We'll figure out the rest later." For the first time in years, Hope felt something flutter in her chest that wasn't fear. It felt strangely like hope, aptly matching the name her mother had given her at birth, a name that had seemed like a cruel joke for far too long. That night, after Mrs. Abernathy had fed them a hearty stew and shown them to a small but comfortable bedroom, Hope tucked Lily into bed and sat by the window, watching the stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky. The child had fallen asleep almost instantly, her small face peaceful for the first time in months. A soft knock at the door startled her. Isaac stood in the hallway, holding a jar of salve. "Mrs. Abernathy thought you might need this," he said, handing it to her. "For your injuries." Hope accepted it with a nod, embarrassed. "Thank you, Miss Hawthorn," he said quietly, not wanting to wake Lily. "I know it's not my place to pry, but if there's anything else you need—" "You've done more than enough already," she assured him. I need to think about our next steps. I can't impose on your hospitality forever." Isaac's expression was serious in the lamplight. "You're welcome here as long as you need, both of you." As he turned to leave, Hope found herself asking, "Why are you doing this? You don't know us." He paused, one hand on the doorframe. "My mother ran from a man like Fletcher when I was not much older than your little girl there. Not everyone was willing to help." His gaze met hers, steady and sincere. "Get some sleep, Miss Hawthorn. You're safe now." As the door closed softly behind him, Hope felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. The days at Cottonwood Ranch settled into a peaceful rhythm that was foreign to Hope after years of walking on eggshells in Thaddeus's household. Each morning, she woke to the sound of Mrs. Abernathy preparing breakfast in the kitchen, the scent of coffee and biscuits filling the air. Lily, who had been withdrawn and fearful for so long, began to blossom in the open spaces of the ranch, chasing butterflies and following Isaac around as he did his chores. Hope offered to help with cooking and cleaning, determined not to be a burden. Mrs. Abernathy Martha, as she insisted Hope call her, welcomed the assistance, though she made it clear it wasn't expected. "Been cooking for that stubborn man for 5 years, Martha explained as they kneaded bread dough together one morning. "His parents were good people, God rest their souls. Took me in when my William passed, and Isaac kept me on after they were gone." "He seems like a good man," Hope ventured. Martha's knowing smile made Hope blush. "One of the best, though he carries his burdens quietly. Lost his wife in childbirth 7 years back, along with the baby. Threw himself into this ranch and hasn't looked back." The revelation sent a pang through Hope's heart. She watched through the window as Isaac showed Lily how to feed the chickens, his patient smile revealing nothing of such profound grief. On their fourth day at the ranch, Hope was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her hands froze on the damp sheet, heart racing as she peered around it to see a rider approaching. Isaac emerged from the barn, hand resting casually near the pistol at his hip as he greeted the visitor. Hope couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw the man hand Isaac an envelope before riding away. When he turned back toward the house and caught sight of her, his expression was troubled. "What is it?" she asked as he approached. Isaac ran a hand through his dark hair. "Fletcher's put out word about you and Lily, offering a reward for information." Hope's blood ran cold. "How much?" "Enough to tempt folks who don't know better." He studied her face. "He's claiming you kidnapped his daughter." "She's not his daughter," Hope blurted, anger flaring. "Lily is my niece. My sister Mary died bringing her into this world, and Thaddeus, he barely acknowledged her existence except to." She couldn't continue. Isaac's jaw tightened. "I believe you. But you should know what we're up against." Hope looked up at him, searching his face. "This isn't your fight, Mr. Xavier. You've done more than enough already." "Isaac," he corrected gently, "and I made you a promise, Miss Hawthorn. I intend to keep it." That evening, after Lily was asleep, Hope sat at the kitchen table with Isaac and Martha, discussing their options. "I could take Lily and head to California," Hope suggested. "My mother had a cousin there, I believe." "Traveling alone with a child would be dangerous," Martha pointed out. "And Fletcher seems determined to find you." "I have a friend in the territorial court," Isaac said thoughtfully. "Judge Harrison. Good man, fair-minded. If we could get your case before him, prove that Fletcher is unfit." "With what evidence?" Hope asked bitterly. "My word against his. He's a businessman in town, and I'm just a woman trying to protect her family," Isaac finished firmly. "The bruises on your arms tell a story, Hope, and if others in town have suspected his cruelty—" "The Rodriguez family," Martha interjected. "Their eldest son worked for Fletcher last year. Came back with stories." Hope felt a flicker of something dangerous, hope itself. "Do you truly think it possible?" Isaac reached across the table, hesitating before placing his hand over hers. "I think it's worth fighting for." The warmth of his touch sent an unexpected flutter through Hope's chest. She looked down at their hands, his sun darkened and calloused from ranch work, hers pale and still bearing the marks of her former life, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine a different future. The next morning, as pale dawn light filtered through the curtains, Hope was jolted awake by the sound of Lily screaming. She bolted upright, heart pounding, to find the child thrashing in the throes of a nightmare. "Lily, Lily, sweetheart, wake up." Hope gathered the sobbing child into her arms. "It's just a dream, darling." "He was here," Lily sobbed, clinging to Hope. "Uncle Thaddeus was here, and he was hurting you again." "No, no," Hope soothed, rocking her gently. "We're safe here, remember. Isaac and Martha are protecting us." The bedroom door creaked open, and Isaac stood in the doorway, concern etched on his features. He was dressed only in trousers and an undershirt, clearly having rushed from his own bed. "Everything all right?" he asked softly. Hope nodded, still holding the trembling child. "A nightmare." Isaac hesitated, then approached the bed, kneeling to meet Lily's tearful gaze. "You know what my ma used to do when I had bad dreams? She'd tell me to think of the nicest thing I could imagine right before I went back to sleep. Said it would chase the nightmares away." Lily hiccuped, her sobs subsiding. "What did you think of?" "Riding my horse through the meadow in spring when the wildflowers are all blooming," he answered with a gentle smile. "What's something nice you can think about?" The little girl considered this seriously. "The kittens in the barn," she decided. "Can I see them again tomorrow?" "First thing after breakfast," Isaac promised. "Think you can go back to sleep now?" Lily nodded, settling back against the pillows. Hope tucked the blankets around her, murmuring soothing words until the child's eyelids grew heavy. As they tiptoed from the room, Hope touched Isaac's arm. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." In the dim hallway their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. For a moment, Hope thought he might say more, but he simply nodded and retreated to his own room, leaving her with a strange new ache in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. The following week brought both progress and new challenges. Isaac rode into town to speak with his contact at the territorial court, returning with cautious optimism. "Judge Harrison will hear your case," he announced as he strode into the kitchen where Hope was helping Martha preserve peaches. "But we'll need witnesses willing to testify about Fletcher's character." Hope wiped her sticky hands on her apron, her stomach knotting with anxiety. "And if no one is willing, the Rodriguez family has agreed to speak," Isaac assured her. "And the doctor in town, he's treated more than a few of Fletcher's victims over the years. He's willing to testify about patterns he's observed." "When will the hearing be?" Martha asked, sealing another jar. "2 weeks from tomorrow." Isaac's expression grew serious as he turned to Hope. "But there's something else. Fletcher was in the saloon today, offering double the reward. He's hired men to search the outlying ranches." Fear, her constant companion for so long, clawed its way back into Hope's chest. "Then we should leave. I won't put you and Martha in danger." "Nonsense," Martha scoffed. "Where would you go that would be safer than here?" "Martha's right," Isaac said. "But we should take precautions. Lily shouldn't play outside where she can be seen from the road, and maybe you both should stay in the root cellar if riders approach." Hope nodded, grateful yet hating that her presence brought danger to these kind people. "Thank you for going to such lengths for us." "It's what anyone decent would do," Isaac replied, though his eyes conveyed something deeper, something that made Hope's heart beat faster whenever their gazes met. That night, after Lily was asleep, Hope slipped outside to get some air, the weight of the day's revelations pressing on her. The night was cool, stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Arizona sky. She walked to the edge of the porch, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders. "Couldn't sleep," Isaac's voice came from the darkness. He was sitting on the steps, a cup of coffee in his hands. Hope startled slightly. "I didn't see you there." "Sorry," he offered her the space beside him. "Mind if I join you, or would you prefer to be alone?" "I'd welcome the company," she admitted, settling beside him. The night air carried the scent of sage and the distant sweetness of the cottonwood trees. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, the symphony of night creatures surrounding them. "I keep thinking about what happens after the hearing," Hope finally confessed. "Even if the judge rules in my favor, where will Lily and I go? I have no money, no prospects." Isaac was quiet for a moment. "You could stay," he suggested, his voice carefully neutral. "Martha loves having you both here, and there's plenty of work if you're worried about earning your keep." Hope turned to study his profile in the moonlight. "That's very generous, but I can't impose forever. It's not an imposition." He met her gaze, his eyes serious. "The ranch feels different with you and Lily here. Better." Something in his expression made Hope's breath catch. Without thinking, she reached out to touch his hand where it rested on his knee. "I don't know how to thank you." Isaac's fingers curled around hers, warm and strong. "You already have, just by trusting me that first day. That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," Hope admitted. "But there was something about you. I just knew." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken feelings. Isaac leaned slightly closer, and Hope felt herself drawn toward him as if by some invisible force. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her, and realized with a jolt that she wanted him to. The moment shattered as a wolf howled in the distance, making them both start. Isaac cleared his throat, releasing her hand and standing up. "It's getting late," he he said, his voice rougher than before. "We should both try to get some sleep." Hope nodded, suddenly shy. "Good night, Isaac." As she returned to her room, her fingers still tingling from his touch, Hope found herself confronting a startling truth: she was falling in love with Isaac Xavier. The realization was both wonderful and terrifying. After the nightmare of her life with Thaddeus, the idea of giving her heart to another man seemed like the height of foolishness. And yet, Isaac was nothing like her cruel brother-in-law. In his steady presence, she felt not diminished, but somehow more fully herself than she had in years. She fell asleep wondering if such feelings could possibly be reciprocated, and whether she dared to hope for a future she had long ago stopped believing in. 3 days later, disaster struck. Hope was in the kitchen with Martha, teaching Lily how to roll out pie dough when they heard the thunder of approaching horses. Isaac burst through the door, his expression grim. "Riders coming. At least 4 of them," he said tersely. "Get to the root cellar. Now." Hope scooped up Lily, who sensed the tension and began to whimper. "Is it? Don't know, but we're not taking chances." Isaac was checking his revolver, his movements quick but controlled. "Martha, go with them." The older woman nodded, leading the way to a trapdoor in the pantry floor. Hope descended the ladder with Lily clinging to her neck, Martha following behind. The space below was cool and dark, smelling of earth and preserved vegetables. "Stay quiet as mice," Martha whispered, pulling the trapdoor closed above them. A sliver of light remained, allowing them to see each other in the dimness. Hope held Lily close, listening to the muffled sounds from above. She could hear male voices, then Isaac's responses, too indistinct to make out the words. Lily trembled against her, and Hope stroked her hair, murmuring reassurances she didn't feel. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then came the sound of boots on the kitchen floor, directly above their hiding place. Hope held her breath as Lily buried her face against her shoulder. "Check the bedrooms," a gruff voice ordered. "Fletcher said the woman would have a child with her." Hope's blood froze. They were searching the house. She exchanged a terrified glance with Martha, who pressed a finger to her lips, more footsteps moving away. The sound of doors opening, furniture being moved. Through it all, Isaac's voice remained calm but firm, insisting there were no women or children at the ranch besides Martha. "And who's this room for?" the gruff voice demanded. Hope realized they must have found the bedroom she and Lily shared. "My late mother's," Isaac replied smoothly. "Mrs. Abernathy keeps it ready for guests. Pretty fresh sheets for a room nobody uses." Hope's heart hammered so loudly she was certain they would hear it through the floorboards. Lily chose that moment to sneeze, the sound exploding in the small space despite Hope's attempt to muffle it. Silence fell above them. Then heavy footsteps approaching the pantry. "What's down there?" the voice demanded. "Root cellar," Isaac answered. "Just stored vegetables and preserves." "Open it." Martha squeezed Hope's arm. "Back corner," she mouthed, pointing to a shadowy recess behind some barrels. Hope scrambled to comply, pulling Lily with her into the darkness as the trapdoor creaked open. Light flooded the cellar as a lantern was lowered, illuminating the space. "See." "Just as I said." Isaac's voice was level, betraying nothing. Hope pressed herself against the rough wall, one hand over Lily's mouth to keep her silent. She could see the man's boots on the ladder rungs as he descended to look around, moving toward their hiding place. The sound of a gunshot exploded above them, followed by shouts and the crash of breaking glass. The man on the ladder whirled, scrambling back up to join the commotion. Hope held Lily tighter as the sounds of struggle continued overhead. More gunshots, the thud of bodies, a woman's scream that Hope recognized as Martha's. Then, horribly, silence. They waited, frozen in fear until the trapdoor opened again and a familiar voice called softly, "Hope, it's safe now." She emerged cautiously, helping Lily up the ladder to find the kitchen in disarray, a broken window, an overturned chair, and Martha pressing a cloth to Isaac's bloodied forearm. "You're hurt," Hope gasped, rushing to his side. "Just a graze," he assured her, though his face was pale beneath his tan. They weren't expecting resistance. When the first one tried to open the cellar, I made my move. "There were 4 of them," Martha added, her hands steady despite the tremble in her voice. "Isaac managed to wound 2, and they dragged their friends out when they realized they'd found no easy prey." Hope surveyed the damage, guilt washing over her. "This is all my fault. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door." "No." Isaac's voice was firm as he caught her gaze. "Fletcher did this, not you." Martha finished bandaging his arm. "They'll be back, and with more men next time. Then we need to accelerate our plans," Isaac decided. "The hearing isn't for 10 days, but we can't wait that long. We need to get Hope and Lily somewhere safer until then." "Where?" Hope asked, desperation edging her voice. "If Fletcher has men searching ranches, nowhere in the territory is safe." Isaac's expression was determined. "There's a place. My friend Thomas Reed has a cabin in the high country. It's remote, hard to find unless you know where to look." "I don't want to leave you here to face them alone," Hope protested. "You won't be." Isaac stood, wincing slightly at the movement. "I'll take you there myself. Martha can stay with her sister in town until this is over." Martha nodded her agreement. "I'll pack provisions." "You'll need to leave before dawn." As they prepared for the journey, Hope found a moment alone with Isaac in the barn as he readied the horses. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she said softly. "I should have just kept running that first day, not dragged you into my problems." Isaac turned to her, his expression softening. "Hope, listen to me. Meeting you and Lily, it wasn't bad luck for either of us." "How can you say that? You've been shot. Your home was attacked. And for the first time in 7 years, I've had something to fight for." His hand reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Someone worth fighting for." The tenderness in his touch stole Hope's breath. "Isaac." Before she could find the words, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, a gentle kiss that spoke of longing carefully restrained. Hope responded, her hands finding their way to his shoulders as the kiss deepened, awakening feelings she'd thought long dead. When they finally broke apart, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since I found you behind that water trough in Oatman." Hope laughed softly, her heart lighter despite their circumstances. "Even with a dirty, frightened child in my arms and looking like I'd been through a war, especially then." His expression grew serious. "I know the timing is all wrong, but I need you to know whatever happens with the hearing, with Fletcher my feelings won't change." Hope's throat tightened with emotion. "Nor will mine." The journey to the high country cabin began before first light, the small party traveling in tense silence. Martha had gone ahead to her sister's home in town, promising to send word if she heard anything about Fletcher's movements. Isaac led the way on his stallion, with Hope and Lily following on a gentle mare. They stuck to game trails and dry creek beds, avoiding the main roads where Fletcher's men might be watching. Lily, sensing the gravity of their situation, remained quiet, her small face solemn as she clung to Hope in the saddle. By midday, they had climbed into pine-covered foothills, the air growing cooler as they gained elevation. "Not much further," Isaac assured them during a brief rest. "The cabin's just over that ridge." Hope stretched her aching back, unaccustomed to long hours in the saddle. "Will your friend be there?" "Thomas is working a cattle drive down in New Mexico territory," Isaac explained. "The cabin will be empty, but it's well stocked with provisions." They continued their ascent, the horses picking their way carefully up steep, rocky trails. By late afternoon they crested the ridge, revealing a small clearing nestled among towering pines. A sturdy log cabin stood at its center, a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney. Hope tensed. "I thought you said it would be empty." Isaac frowned, one hand moving to the rifle in his saddle holster. "It should be." He scanned the clearing, then relaxed slightly. "That's Thomas's horse in the corral, must have finished the drive early." They approached cautiously nonetheless, Isaac signaling for Hope and Lily to stay back while he investigated. He had just dismounted when the cabin door opened, and a tall, lean man with a graying beard stepped out, rifle in hand. "That's far enough, friend," the man called, then broke into a grin as he recognized Isaac. "Well, I'll be damned. Isaac Xavier as I live and breathe." "Thomas," Isaac greeted him with obvious relief. "Didn't expect to find you here, likewise." Thomas lowered his rifle, his gaze shifting to Hope and Lily. "And I see you've brought company." Introductions were made as they entered the cabin, which was simple but comfortable, with a main room containing a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with chairs, and a small kitchen area. Two doorways led to what Hope assumed were bedrooms. While Lily explored the cabin with wide-eyed curiosity, Thomas pulled Isaac aside for a hushed conversation. Hope couldn't hear their words, but Isaac's expression grew increasingly troubled. "Is everything all right?" she asked when he rejoined her. Isaac hesitated. "Thomas brought news from town. Fletcher's escalated his search, doubled the reward again, and hired gunmen from as far as Tucson." Fear knotted in Hope's stomach. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we stay here until the hearing," Isaac decided. "Thomas will ride into town tomorrow to speak with Judge Harrison, see if we can move things along faster." That night, after a simple meal of venison stew that Thomas had prepared, they settled around the fireplace. Lily had fallen asleep on a pallet near the hearth, exhausted from the journey. "She's a brave little thing," Thomas observed, nodding toward the sleeping child. "Reminds me of my Sarah at that age." "You have children?" Hope asked. A shadow crossed Thomas's weathered face. "Had lost Sarah and my wife to typhoid 15 years back." "I'm sorry," Hope murmured, understanding all too well the pain of lost family. "Life in the territories is hard," Thomas replied simply. "Makes the people who survive it either cruel or kind, not much middle ground." He glanced meaningfully at Isaac. "Your friend here chose kindness, despite having reasons not to." Hope looked questioningly at Isaac, who seemed suddenly absorbed in stoking the fire. "I should turn in," Thomas announced, rising with a knowing smile. "Been a long day and I've got an early start tomorrow." After he retreated to one of the bedrooms, Hope moved to sit beside Isaac on the hearth. "What did he mean about you having reasons not to be kind?" Isaac was quiet for so long that Hope thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "After my wife died, I wasn't in a good place. Blamed God, blamed the doctor, blamed myself. Started drinking too much, picking fights." He stared into the flames. "One night, got into it with a man in the saloon who said something about Maria. Don't even remember what. Beat him so bad they thought he might die." Hope reached for his hand, encouraging him to continue. "Thomas found me outside town the next morning, half dead from drink and exposure. Brought me here to this cabin, dried me out, and talked some sense into me." Isaac met her gaze. "Said I could let grief make me into someone Maria would have been ashamed of, or I could honor her by living the kind of life she'd be proud of." "And you chose the latter," Hope said softly. "Tried to. Some days better than others." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Then you and Lily came along, and suddenly it wasn't just about getting through each day anymore. It was about making a future worth having." Hope's heart swelled with emotion. Isaac. Her words were cut short by a sound outside, the distant whinny of a horse, followed by the snap of a twig. Isaac was on his feet instantly, extinguishing the lamp and moving to the window. "Get Lily and go to the back bedroom," he whispered urgently. "Thomas," he called softly, "we've got company." Hope scooped up the sleeping child and hurried to the bedroom as Thomas emerged, already buckling on his gun belt. "How many?" Thomas asked, joining Isaac at the window. "Can't tell. At least 3, maybe more." Hope's heart raced as she settled Lily on the bed, the child mercifully still asleep. She returned to the doorway in time to hear Thomas's next words. "Could be nothing. Might be prospectors or hunters." "Not taking that chance," Isaac replied grimly. "Not with Fletcher's men scouring every inch of territory." "What's the plan?" Thomas asked, checking his rifle. "You take the back. I'll cover the front. If it's innocent travelers, no harm done. If not—" Isaac's gaze found Hope in the doorway. "Get ready to run if things go bad. There's a trail behind the cabin that leads to a cave about half a mile up. You'll be safe there until we come for you." Hope nodded, though the thought of leaving Isaac to face danger tore at her heart. "Be careful," she whispered. The next moments passed in tense silence as they waited, the only sounds the crackling of the dying fire and their own measured breathing. Hope strained her ears, catching the faint murmur of voices outside, then the distinct sound of footsteps on the porch. A sharp knock rattled the door. "Hello, the cabin." Isaac motioned for Hope to stay back. "Who's there?" he called. "Deputy Marshal Wilson from Oatman," came the reply. "Looking for Hope Hawthorn and a child named Lily Fletcher." Hope's blood ran cold. "They'd been found." "Don't know anyone by those names," Isaac responded. "I'm just a rancher up here hunting with my friend." "We have information there in this cabin," the deputy insisted. "Open up or we'll be forced to enter." Isaac exchanged a glance with Thomas, who nodded grimly. "Get Hope and the child out now," Thomas murmured. "I'll hold them off." "Not without you," Isaac argued. "There's no time to debate. Go." Hope's heart hammered as Isaac hurried to her side. "Out the back now," he whispered, grabbing a saddlebag from near the hearth. "Thomas will create a diversion." Hope gathered the still sleeping Lily, who stirred but didn't wake. They slipped through the back bedroom to a small door that opened into the forest behind the cabin. The night air was cold, and Hope clutched Lily closer. Following Isaac into the shadows of the pines behind them, she heard Thomas's voice raised in argument, then a sudden commotion, shouts, the crash of breaking wood, and finally, the sharp report of gunfire. "Isaac," she gasped, halting. "We can't leave him. He's buying us time," Isaac said grimly, taking her arm. "Don't waste it." They fled through the darkness, Isaac leading them up a barely visible trail that wound among the trees. Lily had awakened, but seemed to understand the need for silence, clinging to Hope with wide, frightened eyes. The sound of pursuit reached them, men shouting, crashing through the underbrush. A bullet splintered bark from a tree near Hope's head, making her stumble. Isaac caught her before she could fall, pulling them behind a massive boulder. "The cave is just ahead," he whispered, drawing his pistol. "I'll hold them off. Don't stop until you're inside." "No," Hope clutched his arm. "I won't leave you here to die for us." "This isn't a debate, Hope." His eyes were fierce in the moonlight. "I promise to keep you safe, and I mean to. And I can't bear to lose another person I love." The words escaped before she could stop them, hanging in the air between them. Isaac's expression softened for a brief moment. He cupped her face in his free hand. "You won't lose me. Now go." Another volley of gunfire decided the matter. Hope ran, clutching Lily to her chest as Isaac turned to face their pursuers. The cave entrance loomed ahead, a dark cleft in a rocky outcropping. She ducked inside, setting Lily down in the deepest recess. "Stay here, darling," she whispered. "Don't make a sound." "Where are you going?" Lily whimpered. "To help Isaac. I'll be right back." Hope kissed her forehead. "Remember what he taught you about being brave," Lily nodded, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. "Think about nice things." "That's right. Think about the kittens in the barn and how we'll see them again soon." Hope crept back to the cave entrance, heart in her throat as she peered out. The forest had erupted into a firefight, muzzle flashes illuminating the trees in brief, strobe-like bursts. She could make out Isaac's form behind a fallen log, exchanging shots with at least 3 men spread through the woods. One of the men was moving to flank him, creeping through the shadows where Isaac couldn't see him. Without thinking, Hope grabbed a rock from the cave floor and hurled it with all her strength, striking the man in the shoulder. He whirled, raising his gun toward the cave. Isaac's shot caught him before he could fire, the man crumpling to the forest floor. But the distraction cost Isaac. Another of the men had circled behind him, emerging from the trees with his gun raised. "Isaac, behind you!" Hope screamed. He spun, firing, but not before the man got off a shot. Isaac staggered, clutching his side, but remained standing long enough to return fire. His attacker fell, but Isaac dropped to one knee, clearly wounded. Hope's scream had given away her position. The remaining man turned toward the cave, advancing with his gun drawn. She retreated into the darkness, frantically searching for anything to use as a weapon. Her hand closed around a heavy branch that had been carried into the cave, perhaps by animals or floodwater. As the man's silhouette appeared at the cave entrance, Hope swung with all her might. The branch connected with a satisfying crack, and the man stumbled backward with a howl of pain. Before he could recover, another shot rang out and he collapsed. Thomas stood behind him, bloodied but alive, his rifle still smoking. "Isaac?" Hope gasped. "Alive, but hit bad," Thomas replied grimly. "We need to get him back to the cabin." Together, they half-carried, half-dragged Isaac back down the trail. Lily followed, wide-eyed and silent. By the time they reached the cabin, which showed signs of a violent struggle but was otherwise intact, Isaac was barely conscious, blood soaking his shirt. "Get my medicine bag," Thomas directed as they lowered Isaac onto his bed. "In the cupboard above the stove." Hope hurried to comply, sending Lily to fetch water while Thomas cut away Isaac's bloodied shirt. The bullet had entered his side, leaving an ugly, seeping wound that made Hope's stomach clench with fear. "Is it?" She couldn't finish the question. Thomas's weathered face was grim as he examined the wound. "Bullet's still in there, needs to come out. Can you do that?" "Done it before, during the war," Thomas replied, opening his medicine bag to reveal an array of instruments that looked more suited to torture than healing. "But it won't be pretty, and I'll need your help." Hope swallowed hard. "Tell me what to do." The next hour was the most harrowing of Hope's life. She held Isaac down as Thomas probed for the bullet, his body arching in pain despite his semi-conscious state. Lily had been sent to the other room with strict instructions to stay there, but Hope could hear her quiet sobs through the door. Finally, with a grunt of satisfaction, Thomas extracted the bullet, a misshapen lump of lead that he tossed into a basin with a metallic clink. "Now we clean it and pray there's no infection," he said, reaching for a bottle of whiskey. "This is going to hurt him worse than the digging did." Hope held Isaac's hand as the alcohol seared his wound, his fingers crushing hers in a spasm of agony. When it was done, Thomas bandaged him tightly and administered laudanum for the pain. "Will he live?" Hope asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas's expression softened at the naked fear in her eyes. "He's strong, and the bullet missed anything vital. If infection doesn't set in, he's got a good chance." Hope nodded, tears of relief threatening. "What about the men outside?" "2 dead, 1 wounded, but he won't last the night." Thomas cleaned his hands in a basin of water. The deputy was among them, but I recognized him. He's no real lawman, one of Fletcher's hired guns with a stolen badge. What do we do now? Hope asked, her gaze returning to Isaac's pale face. We wait, Thomas replied simply. For Isaac to heal, and for Judge Harrison to arrive. The judge? But I thought we were going to him. Changed plans when I heard Fletcher had men watching the roads to town. Sent word to Harrison yesterday to come to us instead. Thomas managed a tired smile. He should be here day after tomorrow with a proper U.S. Marshal in tow. Hope slumped in exhaustion, the events of the night catching up to her. Thank you, Thomas, for everything. Don't thank me yet, he warned. This isn't over. Fletcher won't stop until he gets what he wants or someone stops him for good. Hope looked down at Isaac, her heart constricting at how vulnerable he appeared in sleep. Then we'll stop him, she said with newfound resolve. Whatever it takes. The next day passed in a haze of anxiety as Hope tended to Isaac, changing his bandages and coaxing water between his lips when he surfaced briefly from laudanum-induced sleep. Thomas had ridden out at dawn to bury the dead men away from the cabin and to keep watch for any further threat. Lily remained subdued, staying close to Hope and speaking little. In the afternoon, she approached Isaac's bedside, her small face solemn. Is he going to die? She asked in a whisper. Hope gathered her close. No, sweetheart. Isaac is very strong and he's fighting hard to get better. Lily considered this, then carefully placed her rag doll next to Isaac's pillow. Dolly will help him feel better. She helps me when I have bad dreams. Hope's throat tightened with emotion. That's very kind of you, Lily. I'm sure it will help. That evening, Thomas returned with news. Judge Harrison and Marshal Conrad will be here by noon tomorrow. No sign of more of Fletcher's men, but we can't assume they won't come. What will happen when the judge arrives? Hope asked. He'll hear testimony, yours, mine, and Isaac's if he's able. With the evidence of Fletcher's men attacking us, plus what the doctor and Rodriguez family can attest to, Harrison should be able to issue a ruling on the spot about Lily's guardianship. Hope nodded, though anxiety still gnawed at her. And Fletcher, will he be arrested? Thomas's expression darkened. For hiring men to impersonate law officers and attack innocent people. Yes, but whether the charges stick. He shrugged. Men like Fletcher have a way of slipping free. Later that night, as Hope sat at Isaac's bedside, she was startled when his eyes fluttered open, clear and focused for the first time since he'd been shot. Hope, his voice was hoarse. I'm here, she whispered, taking his hand. How do you feel? Like I've been kicked by a mule, he managed a weak smile. Lily, is she safe? She's fine, sleeping in the other room. Hope brushed his hair back from his forehead. You saved us, Isaac. Thomas, alive and well. The judge is coming tomorrow to hear our case. Relief washed over his features. Good, that's good. Hope squeezed his hand. You should rest, save your strength for tomorrow. Wait. His fingers tightened on hers. In the forest before the shooting, what you said. Heat rushed to Hope's cheeks as she realized he was referring to her impulsive declaration. I meant it, she said softly. I love you, Isaac Xavier. I think I have since that first day in Oatman when you promised to keep us safe. A smile transformed his weary face. I love you too, Hope Hawthorn. Have from the start, though I tried to tell myself it was just wanting to protect you. Is that why you kissed me in the barn? She teased gently. That was because I couldn't bear not to another moment. His expression grew serious. When this is over, when you're truly free from Fletcher, I want to build a life with you and Lily, if you'll have me. Hope's heart swelled with a joy she'd never thought to feel again. There's nothing I want more in this world. His eyes were already growing heavy with exhaustion and medication, but he managed to lift her hand to his lips. Promise me something, anything. If Fletcher shows up tomorrow, promise you'll stay safe. No heroics." Hope hesitated, remembering how she had rushed from the cave to help him. "I promise to keep Lily safe," she said carefully. Isaac's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing her evasion, but fatigue was overtaking him. "We'll discuss that later," he murmured as sleep reclaimed him. Hope sat beside him long into the night, listening to his steady breathing and allowing herself, for the first time, to truly imagine a future beyond survival, a future filled with love, family, and the peace she'd been seeking since fleeing Oatman. Judge Harrison arrived the next day as promised, a distinguished man with silver hair and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. With him came U.S. Marshal Conrad, a no-nonsense lawman whose reputation for fairness preceded him. Thomas had prepared the cabin as best he could for the impromptu hearing, arranging chairs around the main table. Isaac insisted on being present despite his injury, supported by Thomas as he made his way slowly to a chair. Hope sat beside him with Lily on her lap, the child unusually quiet as she studied the newcomers. "Mrs. Hawthorn," Judge Harrison began after introductions were made, "I understand you're seeking guardianship of your niece, Lily Fletcher, currently the legal ward of her father, Thaddeus Fletcher." "Yes, Your Honor," Hope replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Lily is my sister Mary's daughter. Mary died in childbirth, and Thaddeus, he's not fit to raise her. So I've heard." The judge's expression was neutral. "Tell me in your own words why you believe Mr. Fletcher should be denied custody of his child." Hope took a deep breath and began her story how she had come to live with Thaddeus after Mary's death, the escalating abuse she had endured, and finally, how Thaddeus had begun to direct his cruelty toward Lily herself. "The night we fled, he came home drunk and found that Lily had spilled her milk at supper," Hope recounted, her voice breaking. "He struck her so hard she hit the wall. When I tried to protect her, he threatened to kill us both." Lily burrowed closer to Hope, her small body trembling at the memory. "And these men who attacked you here," the judge continued, "you believe they were sent by Fletcher." "One identified himself as Deputy Marshal Wilson from Oatman," Thomas interjected. "I know for a fact Oatman has no such deputy. He was carrying a stolen badge and Fletcher's money." Marshal Conrad's expression hardened. "I'll need to investigate this thoroughly. Impersonating a federal officer is a serious offense." The judge turned to Isaac. "Mr. Xavier, how did you become involved in this matter?" Despite his weakened state, Isaac's voice was clear and firm as he recounted finding Hope and Lily in Oatman, recognizing the signs of abuse and offering them shelter at his ranch. "And you had no prior relationship with Mrs. Hawthorn?" the judge pressed. "None, Your Honor. I simply couldn't turn away someone in such clear need of help. Even when that help has cost you a bullet wound and considerable property damage." Isaac's gaze met Hope's. "Some things are worth any price, Your Honor." The judge studied them thoughtfully before turning to Marshal Conrad. "Do you have the statements from the doctor and the Rodriguez family?" The marshal nodded, producing several folded papers. "Dr. Simmons has documented multiple suspicious injuries treated in both Mrs. Hawthorn and the child over the past year. The Rodriguez boy gives an account of Fletcher's violent behavior toward his workers, including an incident where Fletcher broke a man's arm for dropping a crate." Judge Harrison reviewed the documents carefully, his expression grave. Finally, he set them aside and addressed Hope directly. "Mrs. Hawthorn, based on the evidence presented, I am inclined to grant you full guardianship of Lily Fletcher, with her father's parental rights terminated on grounds of abuse and endangerment." Hope gasped, tears springing to her eyes as Lily looked up in confusion. "Does that mean we don't have to go back?" the child whispered. "That's exactly what it means, sweetheart," Hope assured her, hugging her tightly. However, the judge continued, there is still the matter of Mr. Fletcher himself. Marshal Conrad will return to Oatman with a warrant for his arrest on charges of hiring men to impersonate federal officers and attempted murder. He won't come quietly, Thomas warned. Few do, Marshal Conrad replied grimly, but justice will be served one way or another. As the judge prepared the necessary paperwork, a sense of unreality washed over Hope. After years of fear and months of desperate flight, could it really be over so simply? She glanced at Isaac, finding him watching her with a soft smile despite the pain he must still be feeling. I told you we'd win, he murmured, reaching for her hand. Before she could respond, a commotion outside drew everyone's attention, the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders coming fast. Marshal Conrad moved to the window, his hand dropping to his sidearm. 4 riders, he reported. Armed. Hope's newfound relief evaporated, replaced by familiar dread. Fletcher? Hard to say, but we should assume so. The marshal turned to Judge Harrison. Your Honor, I suggest you complete that paperwork quickly. Thomas was already retrieving rifles from the gun cabinet. Back bedroom would be safest for the judge and the females. I'm staying, Hope declared, lifting her chin defiantly. This ends today one way or another. Isaac started to protest, but the determination in her eyes silenced him. Instead, he asked Thomas to take Lily to safety in the back room. The child went reluctantly, clinging to Hope until the last moment. I'll come get you when it's safe, Hope promised, kissing her forehead. Be brave for me. As the riders approached, the tension in the cabin grew palpable. Judge Harrison continued writing, his pen scratching steadily across the paper despite the impending danger. Mrs. Hawthorn, he said without looking up, please sign here as legal guardian. With shaking hands, Hope signed the document that would free Lily from Thaddeus forever. The judge sanded the ink, then folded the paper and handed it to her. It's done, he said simply. Whatever happens next, the child is legally yours. Hope tucked the precious document into her bodice as Marshal Conrad positioned himself by the door, Thomas at the window, and Isaac, despite his injury, with a clear line of sight to the approach. The riders halted outside, and a familiar voice bellowed, Hope. I know you're in there with my daughter. Send her out now, Thaddeus. Hope's blood ran cold at the sound of the voice that had haunted her nightmares. Mr. Fletcher, Marshal Conrad called back. This is U.S. Marshal James Conrad. You are wanted for questioning in relation to multiple federal offenses. I suggest you surrender peacefully. Harsh laughter answered him. I've got no quarrel with you, Marshal. Just want what's mine, my daughter and the woman who stole her. The child is no longer yours legally, Judge Harrison called, joining the marshal at the door. I've just terminated your parental rights on grounds of abuse and endangerment. A moment of stunned silence followed, then a roar of rage. You've no right. No court would take a man's child on the word of a hysterical woman. The evidence speaks for itself, Fletcher, the marshal replied steadily. Now drop your weapons and surrender, or face the consequences. The answer came in the form of gunfire, a volley that shattered the cabin's windows and sent everyone diving for cover. Hope crawled to Isaac's side, helping him take shelter behind an overturned table as bullets splintered the wood around them. Stay down, Isaac urged, his face pale with pain but his eyes alert. The firefight that ensued was brief but intense. Marshal Conrad and Thomas returned fire from their positions, forcing Fletcher and his men to seek cover behind trees and boulders. Judge Harrison, though unarmed, remained remarkably composed, crouching behind a large chair. This is your last chance, Fletcher, the marshal shouted during a lull. Surrender now, send out my daughter, and we'll leave peacefully. Fletcher called back. Hope felt rage building inside her rage at this man who had terrorized her and Lily, who had nearly killed Isaac, who still believed he had the right to demand anything. "Lily is not yours," she shouted, ignoring Isaac's attempt to silence her. "She never was. You never loved Mary, and you never loved her daughter. Shut your mouth, woman." Fletcher's voice was nearly unrecognizable with fury. "I'll kill every last person in that cabin if I have to." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Thaddeus broke from cover, charging toward the cabin with gun blazing in what could only be described as a suicidal rush. Marshal Conrad and Thomas fired simultaneously, their bullets finding their mark. Fletcher staggered but kept coming, his face contorted in hatred. Isaac pushed Hope down, shielding her with his body despite his wound, and fired a single shot that caught Fletcher squarely in the chest. He collapsed mere yards from the cabin door, his gun falling from lifeless fingers. In the stunned silence that followed, the three remaining riders threw down their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Hope trembled in Isaac's arms, unable to process what had just happened. It was over, truly over. Thaddeus was dead, Lily was legally hers, and the future she had hardly dared to imagine was suddenly, startlingly possible. "Are you all right?" Isaac murmured against her hair. She nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. When she finally found her voice, she whispered, "Is it really over?" "It's over," he confirmed, wincing as he shifted to look into her eyes. "You're free, Hope, both of you." Marshal Conrad secured the surviving attackers while Thomas checked on Lily, who had remained safely hidden during the gunfight. Judge Harrison approached Hope and Isaac, his expression solemn. "It's never pleasant when justice must be delivered this way," he said quietly. "But sometimes it's the only way. You have your freedom now, Mrs. Hawthorn. Use it well." 2 weeks later, with Isaac's wound healing cleanly, and the formal inquest into Fletcher's death concluded with no charges filed against any of them, Hope stood on the porch of Cottonwood Ranch, watching Lily chase butterflies in the meadow. Martha had returned from town, bringing news that Fletcher's property would be sold to settle his debts, with a small portion set aside for Lily, as his legal heir, a final irony that Hope found grimly satisfying. Isaac joined her, moving more easily now, though still favoring his injured side. "Beautiful day," he remarked, slipping an arm around her waist. "Every day seems beautiful now," Hope admitted, leaning into his embrace. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Lily's carefree play. The child had blossomed in the weeks since Fletcher's death, her nightmares growing less frequent, her smile returning more readily. She had taken to ranch life with enthusiasm, especially the kittens in the barn that had become her special charges. "I've been thinking," Isaac said after a while. "A dangerous pastime," Hope teased, earning a chuckle. "Perhaps. But I've been thinking about what you said that night in the cabin about wanting to build a life together." He turned to face her fully. "I meant it, Hope. I want you and Lily to stay here, not as guests or people I'm protecting, but as my family." Hope's heart swelled. "Are you proposing, Mr. Xavier?" "I reckon I am, Miss Hawthorn." He took her hands in his. "I know it hasn't been long and you might want more time." "Yes," she interrupted, her eyes shining. "Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." His face broke into a radiant smile as he pulled her close, capturing her lips in a kiss that promised a lifetime of the safety, respect, and love she had once thought beyond her reach. A squeal of delight announced Lily's discovery of their embrace. She ran to them, her small face alight with joy. "Are you going to be my new papa?" she asked Isaac directly. He knelt to her level, his expression serious. "If you'd like that, Lily, nothing would make me happier." The The child considered this with all the gravity a 5-year-old could muster before throwing her arms around his neck. "I would like that very much," she declared. Hope wiped away happy tears as she watched the two people she loved most in the world embrace. The path that had brought her here had been fraught with danger and sorrow, but standing in the golden Arizona sunlight, surrounded by love, she couldn't regret a single step of the journey. They were married a month later in a small ceremony at the ranch, with Martha, Thomas, Judge Harrison, and a few neighbors in attendance. Lily served as flower girl, scattering petals from the cottonwood trees with solemn concentration. As Hope and Isaac spoke their vows beneath the shade of those same trees, she reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken since that desperate morning in Oatman. She had fled with nothing but fear and determination, seeking only safety for herself and Lily. Instead, she had found a home, a family, and a love more profound than anything she had dared to imagine. When Isaac sealed their vows with a kiss, his arms strong and gentle around her, Hope knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found what she had been seeking all along, not just safety, but belonging. A place where both she and Lily could heal from the past and build a future filled with joy. That night, as they stood together on the porch of what was now their home, watching the stars emerge above the distant mountains, Isaac asked, "Are you happy, Mrs. Xavier?" Hope smiled, the name still new and wonderful to her ears. "Happier than I ever believed possible." "Then my promise is fulfilled," he said softly, drawing her close. "You are safe, Hope, and loved, always." Under the vast Arizona sky, with Lily sleeping peacefully inside and the future stretching before them like an unwritten story, Hope knew it was true. She had escaped darkness and found her way into light. She had fled from cruelty and discovered kindness. She had run from fear and stumbled into love. And in Isaac's arms, with Cottonwood Ranch spreading around them like a kingdom of their own making, Hope Hawthorn Xavier was finally, truly home. In the years that followed, their family grew. 2 years after their wedding, Hope gave birth to a son they named Thomas, after the friend who had helped save their lives. 3 years later came a daughter, Maria, named for Isaac's first wife in a gesture of healing that brought tears to both their eyes. Lily thrived under their love, growing into a confident young woman with her mother's gentle spirit and her adoptive father's quiet strength. She never forgot her early years of fear, but those memories faded into distant shadows, overwhelmed by the bright reality of her life at Cottonwood Ranch. As Arizona moved toward statehood and the wild frontier gradually gave way to civilization, Isaac and Hope's ranch prospered. They added rooms to the house as their family grew, planted an orchard that bloomed gloriously each spring, and became known throughout the territory for their hospitality and fair dealings. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, and the desert night wrapped around their home like a blanket of stars, Hope would recall that desperate morning in Oatman, the terror, the uncertainty, the moment when a tall stranger had appeared and promised safety. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac would ask, finding her lost in thought, and Hope would smile, taking his hand in hers, marveling at how life's darkest moments could lead to its greatest joys. "I'm thinking about promises kept," she would answer, "and how love can find us even when we're not looking for it." In those moments, with her husband's hand warm in hers and their children sleeping peacefully under the same roof, Hope knew that some journeys, no matter how difficult their beginning, led exactly where they were meant to home.